Hello and welcome to Served with me, Andy Roddick. Oops, we did it again, Mike. We did another show. Full transparency, I just landed from a little place called Las Vegas and came straight into the studio. Didn't get the amount of sleep that I should have. Might not be my best podcast today. Who knows? I hope you give us a chance all the way through the end. But had a great couple of days doing the TV for Netflix, for the Netflix Slam between Rafa and Carlos. We will get to that in the closing of this show, but lots to get to. If anyone watched our debut of this podcast, formatted for TV on T2, we thank you. This will always be a little bit different than what you may have seen on TV. And if you didn't watch it, then just ignore me when I talk about the next 30 seconds. But the pod will always be a little bit longer than what it is on the T2 version. I'll tell you what they cut. This week they cut what I thought was a cool segment. Apparently I was wrong, about doubles in Indian Wells and why people tend to play it and why outside of the Olympics it might be the strongest doubles draw of any given year. We are going to get into Racket Rundown, still sponsored by nobody. Ugo Humbert, lefty from France, plays a pretty aggressive game, flat off both sides, serves really well. Has traditionally been kind of like a fast court player. You'd look at him, indoor surfaces, a little bit up and down. This guy is finding some consistency. Taking at Daniil Medvedev in the semis of that is a quality win on a fast hard court. That is Medvedev's home. That is where he likes to operate. Humbert, and then taking out Bublik, the beneficiary of Rublev, and that decision. We will get to that right after Racket Rundown, where we walk you through what happened this weekend. But Ugo Humbert is now 6-0 in finals in his career on tour. When the guy finds form, he can get it. He plays a pretty high-risk game, so there are going to be some peaks and valleys, but he's finding a lot more peaks as opposed to valleys compared to the rest of his career. He looked great in Dubai. Big win for Ugo Humbert, 6-4, 6-3 over Bublik in the final. Sebastian Baez winning for the second time in 2 weeks. Sneaky Baez has now won 5 times in the last 13 months, is 5 in the race to World Tour Finals. So in the live rankings starting January 1st, he is 5th in the world right now, winning in Rio and then winning again in Santiago. Will be an informed player. Now let's see if it can translate when he leaves his beloved clay surface. He's going to have to play on some hard for the next month. So we'll see if that translates. Indian Wells, slow, high bouncing. It should fit his game style a little bit, but a good win from him. Alex de Minaur is playing fantastic. You know, top 10 this week, winning again in Acapulco, taking out Casper Ruud there in the final. He has looked fantastic the last 6 months. Every single time he shows up at a tournament, you know that he's going to advance through the draw now. He doesn't take those random losses first or second round anymore. And he got he gave a clinic on being a boyfriend, didn't he? Finishes in Acapulco at midnight, gets on a 6 a.m. flight to San Diego, shows up there. Why, you say? Because he is dating Katie Boulter, who deserves her own congratulations, winning in San Diego in front of her boyfriend. What's better than, who's got it better than these two? Huh? Look at them. Look at them. Way to go. Katie Boulter rolling in San Diego, being Kostyuk in the final in 3 sets. She looked great start to finish in that tournament. So huge congratulations for her, up to a career high. I'm going to get it wrong. It's either 24 or 27. Either way, playing great tennis. And now going into slams, when you're top 32, you're seeded. You're not going to have to play one of the top seeds in the first couple of rounds. So de Minaur, impressive performance on the court, maybe even more impressive performance off the court, making the rest of us schlubs look bad. But congratulations to them. Congratulations to all the winners this week on tour. Actually, Mike, you know what I didn't talk about? I did not talk about my hometown of Austin, Texas, where Yuan beat Wang in the final. Well attended, everyone. My friends in Austin had a great time. It's a small little event. It's actually played at the place where I used to practice at Westwood in Austin, Texas. So happy to see that. Excuse me. That's a plane cough. That's an altitude cough straight off the plane. Excuse me. That's about it. The next portion of the show, we are going to get, it's a bit of an update from what you might have seen on T2. Right before we went on air last week, we shot our show for T2 on Friday. So there will always be a bit of an update on Monday, whether it's results like we just went through. But the big story of the week was Andrei Rublev and him going nuts on an umpire. A couple things. He was wrong about the call that he went nuts about. So that needs to be, it's a lot more forgivable when you go nuts, and you were absolutely right. He was just wrong. ShotSpot went back and looked at it, and the person did not get the call wrong. I like Andrei Rublev. I think most of his tantrums are to himself. Like, tennis has this weird code of, like, you break your own racket and we punish you. Like what adult isn't allowed to break their own stuff if they want to? But he did get kind of close to the umpire, was a little bit maybe intimidating, and then said a bunch of stuff. I had no idea what he said. Apparently, he called the ref a fucking moron and went and sat down. Another ref comes over and says, I speak Russian, and I can confirm that he called the other umpire a fucking moron. Then he got defaulted for that. Mike, imagine being kicked out of your job if you said that. Just like, imagine if I just defaulted you, but also took your paycheck from last week, which you had already worked for. Like, if you were like, Andy, you're a fucking moron, I'd be like, okay, why this time? But also, I took your stuff, fined you, and then I'm like, you know what? In the producer rankings, you're now gone. I get to control. I'm just going to make the decision that you lose all your credibility, all the documentaries you've done. You lose all that. So my main beef with this is, listen, we can argue about whether what Rublev did warranted a default or not. Some will say yes, some will say no. You know, the theater of it is entertaining to me, but yeah, I mean, I get where, you know, he was kind of physically over the umpire, very close, you know, in kind of a threatening manner. Not saying he would have done anything like hit the umpire or anything, but, you know, the optics weren't great. Apparently, he said what he said. I personally don't think it warranted a default, but that's kind of not the point to me. The point was, you cannot take ranking points away. So he won 3 matches. It'd be like if you worked at a car dealership and you had sold 3 cars from Monday to Thursday. You go off and tell your boss something on Friday, you get fired, and they take away your commissions for the 3 cars you sold Monday through Thursday. That makes no sense. You can't take away money that's already been earned. You can fine them, which is what they did, and that I can live with, right? They fined him $37,000. That's steep. That's intense. Seems fair. He put himself in position to be judged, for someone to make a judgment call to get defaulted. So whether or not we agree with it, a mistake was made on his end. He said he's going to be a better person and a better player. From all accounts, he's a great person. He's one of the most liked guys on tour. I don't personally know him, but also I'm going to be a better player. That's like a cool thing to be able to decide, right? Like, because I yelled at this person, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm a better player now. That's a cool trick. But I think they got it wrong at first. You can't fine people points they've already earned. You can't, fine people money that they've already earned. The fine system is in place for a reason. I think they levied it. I don't know if it's fairly, unfairly, but maybe accurately, based on the call that the umpire made. So that is an update. Stuff has changed from Friday to Monday. The T2 version ran an incomplete opinion because news has changed since then. So that is what I think of Rublev. And now we are going to invite in Jon Wertheim. The tennis world is about to enter paradise for 2 weeks, right? They go out to the desert, Palm Springs, Indian Wells. Tell me what it's like for you doing your job out there, because for me, it's like everyone arrives there happy, pumped, you get rest between matches. Walk me through kind of your cadence in your role as a journalist at Indian Wells.
It's probably not dissimilar to the players, which is, you said it, tennis paradise. You talk about brand, it used to be, is this the 5th major? I think tennis paradise is better branding than a 5th major, but no, this is an extraordinary event. I've heard it described as Larry's bar mitzvah. It's, Larry Ellison, who I think, we can have a fact checker look this up. I think he's the 2nd wealthiest person in the world now, behind Elon Musk. Sometimes it varies based on stock price, but this is someone worth hundreds of billions of dollars. He likes tennis. We're very fortunate that he gives some of that largesse to tennis. I'm not quite sure what the P&L statement looks like, but it's a wonderful event. It's in the desert. The scenery's beautiful. The grounds are beautiful. There's a Nobu on site. It's also, I take away all the sort of the fun trappings of the sushi and the smoothies, and it's a really great sporting event. It's just a fun place to watch tennis. You go from court to court. The weather is, the weather can be a little weird. In the middle of the desert, it can be like a 40-degree swing day session to night session.
Big time.
But it's a 2-hour drive from LA. So they call it the desert as if you're, in the middle of the Gobi. But you fly in LAX, you get in your car and you drive 2 hours. It's a special event. I'm sort of curious from your standpoint about what it's like to play there, because it's a weird surface. People don't realize, they see the big stadium on TV, and what they don't realize is that it goes pretty far underground. So it's a sunken stadium. And the conditions, again, it can be really, really hot. You see players sometimes, that they're hydrating and they withdraw because they're exhausted, and other times they're sitting there playing in tights in a Patagonia. So it's a fun event. It's a strange event. It really is. I encourage anyone to go. Never mind whether this is the fifth major or not. It's tennis paradise. What better branding could you have than that?
Well, and also from a fan's perspective, and then we'll get to the actual surface of things and how the weather affects it, because I think there's a biggest delta between hot and 96 degrees versus you go out and play a night match and it's 46 degrees and you can't get the ball to go anywhere. So we'll get into that breakdown in a second. But just as a fan, the player warm-up areas, right? You go, you have an entire field where you can get your work in, but fans are all along the periphery, right? There's an there's an intersection of, you can say hi as someone's going out to kick the soccer ball. The practice courts all have kind of seats and almost like a mini stadium effect to it. So you can get up close. You could never watch an actual sanctioned match and see every player that you would ever want to see going through their paces. The new stadiums they've built, I had like a 10-year gap between when I stopped and played there for the last time versus when I kind of went back, and I was just blown away. Everything great that I remembered was still there, and the improvements were just amazing. It is nice to see a proper investment in tennis that manifests in a fan experience to the level of what you get as a fan at Indian Wells. As a player, it's interesting, right? You're not dealing with traffic. So there are a lot of things that aren't stressful about it at all. Everything's pretty close. It's kind of wide open. It's not like New York where you're grinding and you have to plan. Maybe you'll get there in 22 minutes and maybe you'll get there in an hour and 22 minutes. So there aren't those little kind of mini unpredictable stressors day to day. But the surface is so interesting. And I always explain it, right? So I'm at a desk and it's like a smooth wood table, right? So that's like the fastest surface you could possibly get. A normal hard cart's like going out in front if you have blacktop, kind of rubbing your driveway. That's essentially kind of what it feels like. The surface at Indian Wells with the mixture of sand in it is like if you rubbed your hand on a piece of sandpaper. Like that's only a slight exaggeration. Like your shoes get worn out quicker. They go bald on the bottoms quick. It is, you stop and start and you kind of cut into the court a little bit. It's almost like screeching, but it's weird. So that every time the ball hits that kind of sandpaper type surface, it cuts a little bit at the ball. So after 3 or 4 games, the balls are so much bigger than you would see normally, which means that it's tougher to create pace through the court, right? I call it like the blunt force trauma pace, where you just hit it flat through the court. You're not getting that kind of helpful skid through the court that you get on a fast hard court, grass, et cetera. But you rarely get those type of conditions. You'll get the slow indoor courts built on sand sometimes, but the ball doesn't bounce up. At Indian Wells, it's this weird thing where the flat ball is slower than it normally is, but if you have a monster kick serve and you get it on a warm day and the air is so thin because there's no humidity, like Rafa, I played him twice there. It was an absolute nightmare to play Rafa there because he can create speed. His ball checks and bounces up and away. So there are ways to be aggressive, but it's just not through the court, right? If you hit a monster kick, you're going to be ahead in the rally. If you come in on something, people are hitting passing shots, maybe above their shoulders where normally it's kind of in their pocket. So it is strange. If it is warm and the air is thin, which it normally is, you can win points with the ball flying through the air. It's just not flying with that. You're just not getting the assistance on that skid. And so we talk about the conditions all the time. Like I would say the day versus night in Indian Wells is maybe the biggest delta between a day session and night session on any place on tour, right? The sun's out, the ball's jumping around, you can create some kick serves, you can create some speed. You go night and you get one of those kind of 50-degree nights, all of a sudden that bounce we're talking about is muted significantly. I remember playing John Isner there at night one time, and he's played well there because everything he does kind of gets up and away. Playing him at night one time, and all of a sudden I could actually control his kick serve because it was cold and the ball was just dying. I don't like those conditions, or I didn't like those conditions against most people, but it's so matchup dependent where I'd rather play Isner on a kind of muted court where the ball's not getting up and away, but then you play Rafa and all of a sudden you're dealing with the spins that are out of the zone. So the trade-off is very tricky. If there's wind, if it's still, it all plays completely different. So it does require a little bit of nuance when you are strategizing as a player at Indian Wells.
Let me ask you this too. I should have mentioned this when you asked me what makes this event unique. You know what else does for me is doubles. This event has the greatest doubles draw. I mean, I can't. I don't have it offhand, but I think it was like Rafa and Mark Lopez against Roger and Stan. I mean, most of the top players play doubles. I've heard. First of all, you'll tell me your doubles experience, but I've heard two theories, and feel free to weigh in. One of them is just because of the schedule, it's not oppressively hot most of the time. You've got that extra pad before Miami. It just is convenient for players, especially like a year like this where it's an Olympic year. The other thing I've heard is that everyone really appreciates Larry Ellison running this so extravagantly and going the extra mile. This is a way to give him some extra sessions. I've sort of heard both those theories, but what was your doubles? What was your double schedule in the desert? And any thoughts on the doubles draw that this event tends to get?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think it's the best doubles draw of the year, outside of the Olympics, where people, we would take a gold medal in like a distance spitting competition. A gold medal is a gold medal is a gold medal is a gold medal. We get a little too precious about that in tennis with like singles versus doubles. It doesn't matter. If you have a gold medal, you have a gold medal. But I digress. One thing you left out, and I think it's the main factor of why people participate in doubles, because the men on tour, there's not really any other tournaments besides Miami and Indian Wells where you play it over 10 or 11 days, but you don't extend the format, right? It's not a 3 out of 5 set situation, right? You're playing max 2 out of 3 sets, and you're probably getting 3 or 4 singles off days in the course of that. I mean, you asked my doubles experience there. We won it accidentally one time in 2009. Marty and I did, and I remember.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yeah. Well,
I mean, Marty could have won, I think he won with 5 different partners that year. I think he could have won with my cat. So I think I was a very, very small part of it. But I remember losing to Rafa in the semis, and then coming off, and I was like, okay, we have an hour till we play doubles. And, I'm like mad. I lost to Rafa. It's the only North American event I didn't end up winning. So I kind of wanted to win it. But I come off the court and I said to Mario, I was like, what do we get if we win this match? What do we get? And he told me the number, and I couldn't believe that we were about to play 2 sets and a tiebreaker for that sum of money.
Coming out the court
in the doubles event. So we ended up winning against Mirny Ram, but we played a bunch of singles teams. I think we played like Gasquet Wawrinka one round, if I remember correctly. And so it's great. They pack the stadiums, they get the extra sessions. If you're not on Stadium at night, they put you on Stadium 2, and all of a sudden you're seeing Alcaraz and someone else in doubles. And so I think that's a great point. Like that is a huge part of the culture of Indian Wells, and certainly an advantage of having, 2 weeks to basically play with. For your players. It's like, okay, well, I can either go practice for 45 minutes or I can go on site, get some match atmosphere. Maybe I get, a doubles match in before I actually have to play singles. And so there are a lot of reasons why it's easy to say yes to playing doubles in Indian Wells where you wouldn't normally do that. So as we kind of look through, we've told you why it's the best, and I think that was we don't have any association with the tournament. We don't get any benefit on bragging about it. That's just the way it is. It's an absolute, cream of the crop type event now. As always, a huge thank you to our guy, Jon Wertheim. As teased in the beginning, give you a rundown of Netflix Slam. I was out in Vegas It started with the trip from hell. Everyone's got a flight story, right? Everyone has been delayed. This one was a scary one, right? So it was apparently like 50 knots. Below it, you can land. Above it, you cannot land. So they said at the beginning of the flight, they get on. Hello, this is your captain speaking. Once we approach Vegas, if it's windy, we're not going to land. And it's like there's an outside chance of that happening. It's like, okay, that would suck. We'd be diverted. So 2 hours left in the flight. They're like, it's below, it's going down. Like, no problem. We're going to be able to land in Vegas. I'm like, awesome. Time of life back. So we got to be, I don't know, 1,000 yards. Like, we're in the strip. Like, we're landing. You can see buildings. Like, I don't know if anyone's landed in Vegas. We are landing. Vegas is all around us. All of a sudden, the plane goes, starts rocking side to side. The wind, like you're going, you hear people like start to get out bags. Like it was, and then pilot pulls up, straight up in the air, as much as you can pull up. We fly around for 2 minutes. I'm like, this is bad. This is really bad. And he goes, we're diverting to Phoenix. I'm like, oh, no. Sucks because we were diverted to Phoenix, but bonus because I didn't have to go to my production meeting that night. So, silver linings. Land in Phoenix. Get off the plane because they had to clean it because people started vomiting. So we get off the plane, but sitting like 3 rows ahead of me, and I may have met the nicest celebrity I've ever met in my life, was also on the diverted flight from Charlotte to Vegas. He was going to see U2, their last show at the Sphere, and he didn't quite make it. But Marcus Mumford from Mumford & Sons was sitting three rows ahead of us. And then so we're kind of like in the same space, and he's doing he's like, I feel like he thinks I'm Stifler. Anyway, so we kind of and I finally just said, hey, Marcus, my name's Andy, and he's like, oh yeah, I know you. And so we start talking. Guy's like the nicest guy I've ever met. Like just a dude, like not upset about the diversion, kind of just hanging. He's like, oh, I'm bummed. I wish I could have got there. He talked about kids. And he was like the nicest guy ever. It was like such a pleasant surprise. Like he was awesome.
So did he just turn around and just like get back on a plane and go home?
No, he was like, I mean, he had this weird thing. He was like, oh man, this stinks. Like I have a 6 a.m. flight out of Vegas to LA tomorrow. I was just coming in for the deal. And I was like, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know. There's really not any good options. Like, I don't feel like getting in a car and driving right now. I was like, anyways, but he got back on the flight to Vegas, but like super nice, cool, like dude. I'm like, this guy's played to hundreds of thousands of people before. Anyways, it was like pleasant surprise. So end up getting to Vegas late that night. Supposed to land around, I don't know, 5:30. Ended up landing like around 11 or something like that. So not fun, but c'est la vie, happens with travel. I'm never, ever, ever going to be the person that tweets at an airline. Is there a more annoying tweet than, I'm never going to fly American again because of wind? Like, that's out of the control. Everyone working on the flight, like, no one's in a good mood. No one's happy about it. We don't need to throw out toys. Everyone, but I will say, like, the people on the flight were awesome. Like, everyone was, like, in a super good mood. No one was acting like a jackass, which is rare at airports and airplanes and stuff. So anyways, we get to Vegas, do the Netflix slam. Obviously, this is a new thing. Netflix streaming live tennis. Setting up the Bay. It was an arena by the Mandalay Bay, put on by MGM in partnership with Netflix. They put together like a pretty cool group of characters to call the match, right? You have Patrick McEnroe, Jim Courier, who I think is the best commentator in tennis, did the play-by-play. Andre Agassi, Prakash Armitage, and Kay Adams. We did the studio set. So before, kind of during switchovers, afterwards, for me, it's like anytime there's a chance to hang out with Andre, I'm pumped. And if I'm getting paid for it, even better, you know? But it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm curious to hear what your opinion is on it, Mike, producer Mike, because like in person, there wasn't a seat in the house. People were thirsty. I think there was like a full active awareness of the fact that this could be the last time that anyone sees Rafa, right? He's going to play Indian Wells, but I think that'll probably be his last hardcourt match or tournament ever. We may have just watched his last indoor match ever. Certainly the last like kind of spectacle exhibition as an active player. And so the crowd was kind of there for it, and like a perfect storyline passing of the torch to Carlos Alcaraz, who can now draw that type of crowd on his own, right? And filling the shoes of Rafa so well. You know, to have two champions, you know, older, younger, it was all just, it was a very obvious and great storyline. And they played well. You know, Carlos looking for a little bit. There was some question marks about his ankle after he turned it in Rio. He wasn't running full out. Like, he would run to his forehand. He wouldn't put on the brakes like he does so well, and then kind of get back into the court. He kind of like ran through the ball. Neither of them served very well. But there were some good moments, and the drama of the match was fantastic. You know, I think people often equate, like, if a match is dramatic, they say it's a great match, and I don't always necessarily agree with that. I don't think it was a great match from kind of the balls and strikes of it, but the drama was high. Rafa saves 5 match points. It was a great event considering they'd never done it before, at least in the arena. I obviously can't watch because I'm doing the television, but in the arena, I thought it went off great at 10 out of 10. High drama, went to the tiebreaker. They both seemed happy and into it, and they came out and like we're actually playing from the word go. It wasn't like a laughy, jokey thing the entire time. But how did it look on TV?
I mean, it looked fantastic in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was the most polished live event that Netflix has done so far, and it felt like there were stakes. Like when it was coming through the screen that the guys wanted to be there, and you know there was an element of them that they wanted to win. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just, hey, we're out here having a good time with mics on. So I really appreciated that, and honestly, I watched it, had it on when the kids were running around, and Zoe, our oldest, actually sat down and watched, you know, the final set with me, and she really enjoyed it. And she was asking me a lot of questions. You know, I wish they would have let Andre like speak a little bit more during the when he was in the booth. Yeah. Just to hear more of what he was saying, just because it is an exhibition and wasn't so serious. But all in all, I would give it a A+.
Yeah. And Andre, I mean, I was there with him. You could tell that he has all this bottled up knowledge that he just wants to release. And frankly speaking, we did 7 minutes off the top with 4 people at a desk. Like, it's never gonna, you're not gonna have Andre kind of get on one of his legendary monologues. I'm always there for it. I think it's fascinating. I hope that we have him on, and you know, we'll certainly give him all the space he needs anytime. You know, if I could do a show or a pregame show or with someone in tennis, it would probably be Andre. You know, obviously my idol, but just if you get that engine going, his brain just works, and the way he sees patterns and what he would do to break someone down. You know, when we were open the show, do the studio, kind of talk about what's to come, you know, really fun. And then I think my favorite part of the entire thing was kicked it up to the booth to Jim and Patrick. And then Andre and I just sat there and watched like the first 5 or 6 games and talking about, you know, Carlos and what he needs to improve and how Rafa looks. And, you know, just talking shop with someone who has that tennis IQ is like my favorite. You know, it's a complete nerd out. So that was really fun. And it was great. Like, the event was great. It was well put on. There were a lot of production meetings. I kind of got the confirmation bias that I don't think I needed. You know, we come on here and we have, you know, we'll come in and I'll write the show. We have a thread going with producer Mike, Jon Wertheim, and I throughout the week, kind of just storylines. What do we want to do? What do we want to talk about? And then I'll kind of come in here 30 minutes before we go on and kind of write down order and kind of make the final call on what we actually talk about. I do not run that by Jon. He just kind of is ready to react, and I think that's better. But not a lot of meetings about meetings, which I like. I think I like kind of that first reaction. And I think when things are on television and overly rehearsed, you kind of lose a little bit of that magic. And so I don't know that full-time commentary and that sort of thing is for me. So I'm thankful for you all for listening to us on Served and making this a viable medium to do and talk about tennis the way that I like to. You know, kind of get in the weeds and drill down on subjects and hopefully show you a different side with some interviews. With Kim was great, Max Eisenbo was great, and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I enjoy doing it. So this has been great. Netflix Slam was great, and I'm happy to be back here. Being able to expand on a thought a little bit. And I would love to get Andre on sometime. And frankly, I'd love to work with him at length anytime also. I think he is just, I'm happy he's kind of coming back into tennis a little bit. He's been a bit of a recluse for a while. And Jon and I think are going to talk about that for next week's show a little bit more in depth. But listen, we are lucky to have had someone like Rafa Nadal in tennis for as long as we have. Every single person he comes across, it's like he doesn't have an off day with people, right? Shaking hands of every single person. He is just, there's no chance he can feel like doing that crap every day. There's just no chance. True gentleman. I like that it felt like a celebration of him and like a thank you for what you've given us over the years. I thought it was cool, simultaneously early start in the States, prime time in Spain on Netflix. The streaming nature of things, I think, makes these one-night events extremely viable. I mean, it's Pandora's box with kind of the one-night exhibition. You can put it in Vegas. You can tell a story. You can pick your players. So I think and sense that there will be a lot more of this. I think it's a great thing. I like that tennis is now being addressed in the streaming world a little bit. Obviously, Netflix has liked it with the Untold doc with Marty. Breakpoint now in its second season. They're obviously getting positive feedback enough to want more tennis programming, which is great for the tennis ecosystem at large. I think there's like this weird pop culture moment going where I don't think tennis has ever been more respected for how hard it is. I think there's a recognition. I remember, when I was playing and even working on a sports show with other athletes where it's like tennis was viewed as this like soft sport. And, now I think people are finally understanding like it's a drain mentally, physically, the travel. And I think tennis, at least mainstream, is finally getting the respect that it deserves for how hard it is. But I had a blast out in Vegas. We will be on T2 this Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to kind of preempt the coverage on T2 from Indian Wells, so that will be fun. And then the week after that, we're going to make it a little easier for you. I think we have a 7 p.m. slot that has our name on it. From there on out. So hopefully it will be a little bit easier. Hopefully you all are fully understanding the mix between this pod and the audio version and what we put on T2. Listen, the goal is to do things our way, make it a little bit differentiated, and hopefully have a good impact on tennis. And I personally would love to give something back to something that to a sport that has given me so much. I feel like I'm falling in love with it all over again. I was kind of gone for a long time. I play tennis all the time now. I watch tennis all the time now. 4 years ago, before I took the job with Tennis Channel, I was kind of at arm's length, and I'm back in. I'm loving it, and frankly, it's just such a great product to be a part of. Or to be able to talk about and to watch right now. So thank you for listening with us on Served. Again this week, hopefully tell your friends. Content is always available on our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, follow on all the social media platforms. Check us out, the podcast, wherever you get your podcast. I think most people are doing it on Apple and Spotify. And then check us out at T2. This week, it'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern. The weeks after that will be at 7 p.m. Not this weekend. The weekend after, we're going to have James Blake on, which will be awesome. He's the tournament director in Miami, so maybe I'll finally understand what the fuck a tournament director does. That'd be great. We'll see you next week.